Himself involuntarily in connection to the May 1st chokehold death of Neely and was charged with second-degree manslaughter.
An abortion pill reversal process continues to save babies from chemical abortions. Details in this report from AFN's Charlie Butts.
In 2018, Heartbeat International took over the Abortion Pill Reversal Network, which is a group of medical personnel available around the country that can reverse a chemical abortion. Spokeswoman Krista Brown tells AFN that in the start there had been 450 babies saved.
In 5 short years of overseeing the Abortion Pill Rescue Network at Heartbeat International, we now have that number increased by tenfold, 4,500 babies. So these are brave moms who, against all odds, choose life for their babies.
Brown says it's effective most of the time if the woman or girl starts the process quickly enough.
She starts the abortion, she takes that first pill, and then she has regret. We can get her progesterone right away. We find this to be an emergency process that we need to help her as soon as we can. Typically, we give her oral progesterone, and the success rate is about 68%, so almost 70% of these babies can be saved.
Having the baby is the right answer as opposed to killing it through chemical abortions. Even under the best circumstances, 1 in 5 using them end up in the hospital because of hemorrhaging, incomplete abortions, or severe infections. I'm Charlie Butts.
For American Family News, I'm Robert Thornton.
Friendships is offering an exciting opportunity for young adults who want to grow in their walk with God, become physically fit, and learn relief ministry while serving in the Middle East. This is an amazing opportunity to serve God and experience Israel. Check out Seahawks' one-year scholarship program at friendships.org or call 337-433-5022. That's 337-433-5022. The next session begins August 19th.
You know, as Christians, we have to understand and be real with where we are.
That's what we have to see first, individually.
And where our mindset is and what we desire.
Airing the Addisons.
I think what God is really calling us back to, it's those individual personal revivals in our own lives where we're like, oh Lord, what have we done? We have minimized you.
Promoting truth, wisdom, and empowerment.
As the church, man, we should be on the forefront of making disciples, of indoctrination and godly things.
If we don't train our kids, they will not be able to stand.
Airing the Addisons.
On American Family Radio, thank you so much for listening. I'm Miki.
And I'm Will.
And Sweet Victory and J-Mac are on tap to help us navigate the program. Today, I kind of wanted to talk about leadership, and I wanted to talk about some of the things that are happening in Florida through Governor Ron DeSantis that I think are remarkable.
Yeah.
And you know, I jokingly said a while back, whenever DeSantis was on the move, that it could rightly be described as DeSantizing, like cleaning things up, exposing things to light. And I do maintain that that's what's happening. But there's something else that I think happens as a result of what this governor is doing in his state. I think it actually shines a light on other conservative states and conservative governors, because I think that what you see coming from Ron DeSantis is hey, what's that over there? You know what I mean? It's like the move to do what's right, like finally right things. It's like, you know, kind of going into all of the crevices of the state and looking at, you know, where there's been waste, where there's been the trampling of the rights of people, and the things that I think in America we all believed could be done, like, and should be done, right? Like, these are just sort of like a basic understanding of what it is to be a citizen. I think you see the governor of Florida getting back to that. And so I wanted to point some of those things out. We have several articles here in the area of education reform. Man. And so of course I want to hang out there because I think that there's a lot of talk that we engage in on the education front. But you can do all that you feel is humanly possible by the grace of God to protect your children. You can send them to private Christian school. You can educate them at home. You can even send them to public school, and whatever it is, that is your choice to do that. you can believe that you've put some parameters in place. And I'll speak specifically if you sent your kid to private Christian or you've homeschooled. You can believe that you've put some parameters in place. Well, then you send them off to university. And I feel like that becomes sort of like the last ditch effort of the enemy to wrestle your kids away.
Yeah.
Presumably you will have sent them fortified
Yeah.
and ready for that type of attack. But there are just so many horror stories
Yeah.
of kids who they got away from family. They got wrapped up in, the common talk of the day.
Yeah.
And then their grades depended on their agreement. Oh boy. Then
Right.
what do you do?
And I believe that part of the dropping of the ball is that parents have not sent the children to school, rooted in that way. Not everybody, but there's a large percentage. So they're already gone once they're already out of the house. So I think, that has been the issue, but hopefully that is changing. Hopefully God is using this program and others to encourage parents to at home start this process because God has mandated this, and that will hopefully be on the decrease. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and then you want if you're going to send them off, you want them to go to a place where you feel like that place is not going to work against all of your efforts. It's not going to try to. Oh my goodness, you could handpick them.
Yes,
you could handpick them. Even look, and I, carefully here. But even among some of the institutions that profess to be Christian,
that's right,
they have succumbed to the spirit of this age, like the times that we're in.
Yeah.
And so you've got things like critical race theory and diversity, equity, and inclusion. All of these things have kind of seeped into the pores of what you would think on the surface. This is a Christian institution. I'm going to send my kid here and my kid is going to be okay. Even we are aware, and we've talked about it on this program, that there were private Christian institutions. In fact, we were sent something directly that we should investigate. And we did. I say investigate, like read the article, right? Like look into it. And it's true that the school was actually engaging in teaching critical race theory sort of like on the slick. And so we had a parent who sent us an email and said, hey, look at this. This is what I received. Do you think this falls in the category of critical race theory? Yes, ma'am, it does. Absolutely, it does. And so, and praise God, because her response was, okay, well, pray for me because I'm going to have to deal with this. Yeah. Yes, that's at a private Christian school. Yeah. Pray for me. I'm going to have to deal with this. And so why am I saying that? I'm saying that because we live in a culture that is so overwhelming. And let me back up. When I say read the article, this was actually an internal correspondence that we were sent, that parents received. And it struck this Christian parent that this coming from this Christian school seemed to smell of critical race theory and all of that. And sure enough, based on my research and my expertise in that area, whatever you consider that to be, yes, it fell squarely in the category of critical race theory. So just to say that, I said read the article. It was an internal communication that she sent to us. Okay, so here's the point that I'm making. So many people don't know how to discern because they're not reading God's word. So what they're doing is they're just taking what's happening in the culture today and they're trying to find the most Christian way to adopt that. Here's what's happening in the culture. So how do we take that and adopt that as our conviction, but then find a way to put scriptures on it or find a way to make it a Christian principle, when I think that is absolutely the wrong way to look at it? That to me is very similar to trying to build a place of worship unto God on top of a place that was formerly offered as worship unto Satan, unto idols, unto demons, building on the high places, and then saying, hey, come just add God to this. You know what I'm saying? And then we can kind of clean it up and make it something that the Lord accepts. And we see throughout scripture, the Lord rejects that. And I think that's what we've seen happening in our public school system. We've seen that happening in our churches. We've seen that happening in our Christian schools. And I will say, I know people think that we are maybe a little bit wound quite tight, but I will say this, even as you review, and for us, this is true, as we review homeschool curricula, we are taking note of worldview that is communicated even in the homeschool curricula. Like we don't believe that we are discipling or fortifying our kids because simply they are educated at home. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is make disciples. We are trying to train them in godliness and righteousness, which means that the tools that are utilized at home must pass the Bible test. They must be able to be filtered through a biblical lens and come out looking just like God's word.
Yeah.
And so when we have happened upon content that we found to be not consistent with that, even coming from Christian content, I'm just going to be careful here. We said to our kids, no, and then made moves to no longer use that particular, resource. And why are we doing that? Because we don't believe that just because we educate them at home, that's just it. Now we victorious. Now, no, we believe that it's an ongoing work of discipleship and of training godliness and righteousness. And that's what we're endeavoring to do. Right. So I'm saying all of that to say, when I look at the DeSantizing that is happening in Florida, okay, when I look at what this governor is doing repeatedly, there is a there is a poised confidence coming from Ron DeSantis that I just have to tell you is refreshing to me. Like it is so common sense and so basic that it's like profound, right? Which, because we have so sacrificed just like basic, understanding. We've sacrificed like just bottom line. Okay, here's how we operate. Here's what we don't do. And so now to bring back just even the basics seems like it's like, oh my goodness, quantum leaps. Yeah. Right? It's like scaling this mountain, but really it's just like kind of walking up a little hill because it's just basic stuff that this governor is doing. Right. But the point of today's program, excuse me, as we look at some of what the DeSantizing is that's happening in Florida, the question is, what does this say, excuse me, about other governors who would see themselves as conservative? Yeah. What does it say about other state legislatures that would say, we are responding to those who elected us? Because I think so often what we, the American people, think, and this is really sad, we think that for those of us for whom it's true, I know not everyone thinks this, but we tend to think that our elected officials are doing all that they can in the ways that we have elected them to govern. We tend to think that, okay, if they're not doing it, maybe it just can't be done. Maybe there's no way we can, jump these hurdles. Maybe there's just no way. And maybe we just accept what we have handed to us in our state. And I think that when you look at what's happening in Florida, under strong leadership, with people who know I'm not playing around, right? Then you've got people who are really held to the fire and saying, you were elected to do a job by people who expect you to do that job. And I'm also expecting you to do a job. So now it says to not only people in Florida, but to me as a Mississippian, it says, hold on a second. There are certain expectations that need to be returned to the people. Yeah. Like, and notice I'm not even talking about rights. I'm talking about expectations. So often we just accept what is handed to us because our expectations are low. We're like, politicians are wasteful. Politicians, they're not going to do. And so we just keep electing people and then just continue with our expectations real like down low to the ground. It's like, but at least the person calls himself or herself a conservative and we count that as a win. No, but where's the action? Right. Like where are the things that the people are doing that support the conviction that they presented that portended your electing them? Right. These are the things that led to your electing them, and then you should expect to see it. So here's what I'm saying. I'm saying when I look at Florida, all right, I'm like, man, if people are willing, there are things that they can do to protect educators. There are things that they can do to protect people's consciences in this country if they are willing. We talked a little bit about this last week. I want to go back to that. It's not in the category of education per se, but there's just some DeSantizing that's happening that I think, listen, guys, if we want to recalibrate our expectations of the people that we elect to office, I don't know. I just say, look at what's happening in Florida because I think that it's remarkable to see what's happening there.
Yeah, so, I would say, it's refreshing to have someone who don't mind stepping out and leading the way in certain things. Now, I know there's some things that he's doing that some other states have done, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that he's sticking his neck out on that nobody else is kind of touching, and and he had a unique situation of being the state that housed Disney. So I know that's something different, and he's stand that he's making it against them. But on the education front, man, he's doing some things to really look out for the children and the teachers. And, and I think other governors that would consider themselves to be conservatives or whatever, I hope it would stiffen their backbones. And
That's
they say,
what.
like,
Yes.
okay, man,
Yes.
because good leadership tends to do that.
That's right. It's
you
kind
may-
of contagious.
Right. You may want to do it, but somebody has to step out and
That's
do
right.
it. My dad told me one time when I was considering starting a Bible club in my high school. He said, look, you should do it because people are sheep. They're looking for someone to get out there and do it first, and you'll see that you'll have a lot of people backing you. And that's exactly what happened. I stuck out my neck and I did it. I got the sponsors, and man, we had a whole Bible club in my school. And it just took somebody stepping out and doing that, and not willing to be ostracized or whatever may come. It usually stiffens the backbones of others. So I think
that's right. And I'm glad that you've got a person that has that kind of resolve that DeSantis has, in the same state where Disney has enjoyed all kinds of kickbacks and all kinds of it's their heyday there. They do it's their world. It's like the Floridians are just living in their world. They really believe it's Disney World.
Right.
You know what I mean? So they really believed, I should put in past tense, that it's Disney World and that they could just do whatever they want. But the amazing thing, in my opinion, is that you have someone who is in that place who does not have this fear of this entity that many would consider the behemoth or maybe even a Leviathan type, that it is, you can't take it down, that you have someone who says, no, it's like Matumbo, like, not in my state. and I think that's amazing. And I think when you see that going beyond, so that's in the area of entertainment. That's in the area where you have people who believe they had a monopoly on people. They had they could do whatever they want. And so then you have the governor turning his focus to education and higher areas of education and people who think that they have a monopoly. They think they own education. They can tell your kids, this is what you have to learn. Anyway, it's really good stuff. We're going to talk about that on the other side of the break. This is Aaron the Addisons on American Family Radio. Please stay right there.
Here's Bert Harper on the AFA Fishbowl Retreat 2023.
We are so determined to come alongside the church and to support pastors who share Christ with others, but also stand in the gap for righteousness. And Fishbowl will encourage that pastor to be that kind of a man.
Bert and his wife Jan are hosting again this year with speakers Jeff and Debbie Shreve from Real Truth for Today.
Every difficulty that comes into your life and my life, it's a test of faith. The stormy sea where Jesus is asleep in the boat, that's a test of their faith, and they didn't do very well. And so most of the time when we ask that question, why, God's response is, my child, just trust me.
The AFA Fishbowl Retreat 2023, September 26th through the 28th at the Riverbend Retreat Center in beautiful Glen Rose, Texas. Register at repairingthefoundations.net. repairingthefoundations.net, or call 662-844-5036, extension 297. In this new world, on this new day, we rejoice that Roe v. Wade has been overturned. Preborn has been preparing for this moment for the past 16 years by positioning their clinics in the top 6 abortion states where 50% of abortions occur. Sadly, 5 of these 6 states will continue to abort babies at an even greater level. And since the abortion pill accounts for over 50% of abortions, babies are even more at risk. Preborn pregnancy clinics are completely dependent on you as they offer life-saving ultrasounds and the life-saving gospel to moms and babies in crisis.
When I heard her heartbeat, I decided to keep her. And now my daughter's about to be 3. I don't know where my life would be without her.
To learn how you can be a part of rescuing babies' lives and sharing the heart of Jesus, go to preborn.com or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. Here's Ellis Craft of Reach a Village Ministries.
A few months ago, a student in a village school attempted to end his life. 2 other students that were in a discipleship group helped prevent the tragedy. These 2 students befriended him and shared the hope of Jesus. When the news reached the principal, the Lord opened her eyes and heart. Instead of wanting to shut down discipleship groups, the principal requested every classroom have access to a disciple maker. This is just one example of how God is using ministry partners with Reach a Village. Your gift today will be doubled. $50 will reach 100 children, $500 would reach 1,000 children. To give, I want you to go to reachavillage.org or call 833-773-2247. Again, to call Reach a Village and talk to our staff, that's 833-7-REACH-7.
It was always you. You love me at my worst. Promise I'll put you first. Now I know it's true. Yeah, it was always you.
Welcome back to Aaron the Addisons on American Family Radio. Today we're just talking about the DeSantizing that is shining a light not only in Florida, but on other conservative-leaning states and conservative-leaning leadership. And I just, as I read about what's happening there, I just ask the question, is it convicting for those in positions of leadership who call themselves conservative? Does it embolden them? Does it stiffen their backs, as you were suggesting, Will the Great, before we went to the break? And I'm hoping that's what it does. I'm hoping that for our listeners all across this country, as you do what I do, that is to say, keeping up with what's happening that impacts the family. If people could understand that the things that really move people are the things that directly impact their families, right? Like this matters to me because it dismantles the family if it goes unchecked. So I think those things are important. If you are keeping up with those things, then those are the things that you should be prayerfully considering when you are going to the polls to elect people who will represent you.
Yes.
Are they representing you?
Right.
Right. We'll get back into this. But before we do, Will the Great.
Yeah.
Because of an oversight.
Yeah. So we're extending the registration for the Marriage Family Life Conference. It will be extended until June 1st. So if you haven't made a decision or you was kind of going back and forth whether I should go or not, this might be a confirmation for some of you, that registration will be open until June 1st. You can go to marriagefamilylife.net, marriagefamilylife.net, and get your tickets there. And so if that's you, if you've been thinking about it and, should I go, shouldn't I go? Man, here's an opportunity if you feel, that you should. So marriagefamilylife.net, the deadline to get the tickets are extended it is extended till June 1st. And also just to let you know that if you go to marriagefamilylife.net and click on the events tab, you can see the Marriage Family Life Conference information and also AFA at the Ark. And so just be aware of that.
Did we secure more rooms for that? I'm aware that all of the rooms we had were booked up. I think we're in the process of opening more rooms. A couple of people who attempted to register informed us of that.
I'll find out about that. Right. I know that we have inquired about getting more rooms for AFA at the Ark, but I'll find out for sure. But yes, you can still go and check out the information there, and you go to marriagefamilylife.net.
Marriagefamilylife.net. Okay, this article here from the Daily Signal: DeSantis signs bill ending diversity, equity, inclusion programs in higher education. This bill signing happened today. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, a Republican, signed legislation into law to eliminate so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, in higher education. State legislators on May 3rd, passed the bill, SB 266, to bar public colleges and universities from spending taxpayer dollars on DEI programs. The bill signing fulfills a promise DeSantis made in January to defund such programs on college campuses. I think we have a clip of what some of that sounded like today down there in the Sunshine State.
Here we go.
So the first bill that I'll be signing is SB 266. And what this does is reorient our universities back to their traditional mission. And part of that traditional mission is to treat people as individuals, not to try to divvy them up based on any type of superficial characteristics. We're going to elevate merit and achievement above identification with certain groups. And in order to do that, we had to look at this new concept, relatively new concept, called Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And I didn't know much. I mean, this is something relatively recent. I mean, Chris Ruvo can talk about when this really started to percolate. I think it had probably been there a few years ago, but then kind of the post-BLM rioting and the George Floyd summer of 2020, I think you saw it really take off. And on its face, I mean, when I see diversity, I think different viewpoints. Have a robust academic discussion in the university. Isn't that what they're for? In reality, what this concept of DEI has been is to attempt to impose orthodoxy on the university, and not even necessarily in the classroom, but through the administrative apparatus of the university itself, and that manifests itself in a number of different ways, but this has basically been used as a veneer to impose an ideological agenda, and that is wrong. And in fact, if you look at the way this has actually been implemented across the country, DEI is better viewed as standing for discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination, and that has no place in our public institutions.
God for that revelation of the new way to describe DEI. Gave it to the governor, and now it's mine. Thank you so much. Thank you. You heard it here first from the governor, and every now, oh goodness, it's easy for me to say. Henceforth, it's mine. That's my revelation. I came up with that. Discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination. That's a joke, guys. I think that's a brilliant way to put that. I'm sure somebody somewhere else has said that. I'm sure that's not unique to the governor. But this is great because what does this say in the state of Florida? This says that you're no longer going to discriminate against students, but you're no longer going to discriminate against employees as well. That you're going to put an end to racism, that you're going to put an end to indoctrination like this. But here's the thing. It's crazy to me that this is refreshing. It's crazy to me that this becomes a headline because this is very basic, right? That you want people in a position based on merit. That you want people to be able to operate according to their conviction and not feel that they've got to give in to a set of thoughts or a set of beliefs in order to maintain their job, like in order to maintain their position. Like this is just absolutely mind-boggling to me that in a time where you feel like, okay, common sense, right? We want people in place based on merit. Now you've got to sign bills into law. You've got to sign bills into law to say, no, we don't want to judge people based on the color of their skin.
Well, because it's not common sense anymore to a lot of people. Like the narrative that's been placed out there has been that yes, you have to have these different points, to be able to be the one selected for these things. Is this person this or that? They're going to get, picked first. And because it's all identity, and so I think what he's doing, he's bringing us back to where we should be.
That's our origins.
Yeah. It's like that's what we should have never left that, area. But he's just trying to bring it back. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to tell you again, and part of the focus, part of the reason why I wanted to look at this is just to ask the question, what are the steps that can be taken all across this country by individuals who elect officials who have a certain thought in mind that they want represented, right? And what are the steps that need to be taken to protect people as they operate in these various areas? I will say this, when I think about the slide toward communism, and I think about the slide toward this, no one is allowed to think independently, or if you want your thoughts, I'll give them to you. You know what I mean? If I want your thoughts, I'll give them, that kind of notion. If our country is sliding in that direction, and it seems to me every day we are. It seems to me every day we are, that our country is just sliding in that direction. In the state of Florida, it seems like there's a barricade put up that says, now we're going to stop the slide, right? You think about what that means for students submitting papers or, entrance essays and things like that. You think about employees who have different viewpoints and say, well, I'm not going to call a man a woman. I'm not going to use people's preferred pronouns. So now what the state of Florida is saying, that people are not going to be forced to go through those indoctrination camps that they call oh my goodness, what is it, like in school meetings or whatever but all of it is indoctrination. It's here's how you talk to people. Here's what you need to say. Here's what you need to consider when you stand in front of a person of color, which is the epitome. It's the epitome of critical race theory, all of the critical theory iterations, right? That you see people externally first. That is what you're supposed to make much of people's color again. That's where critical race theory has moved us, and you see it in schools. So, in addition, this new law prohibits colleges and universities from using state or federal funding for programs or activities that advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion, or promote or engage in political or social activism. Think about, because we can look at these things and we can think, well, a little bit of political activism is okay. A little bit of social activism is okay. But what politics?
Right.
What social constructs? And these are the things that people didn't have control over. I will tell you something else that the governor did today in protecting higher education institutions, this idea of accreditation. And I think this is something that we hadn't thought about before. So often we think that the things that must be taught to students, we think that this is just the result of activists, right? So the activists working, the activists infiltrating the professors, the educators. And so the activists kind of having an influence over that. But one of the things that the governor has pegged, his leadership that they have pegged, is that, a lot of this kind of goes back to accreditation. So when you've got these accreditation standards that are fixed in a certain way, that these are our values, this is what we believe is important for a kid to have learned or mastered before he or she graduates, then you've got the university that in many ways their hands are tied. And so what Governor DeSantis is saying is that, we're going to go through the accreditation standards as well. Man, when I say DeSantizing, because this is not just, here's the thing. This is not just throwing people a bone where you say, hey, I want you to hear a few buzzwords here and get geeked up. Right? Like you hear people, like if a person says, hey, we're putting an end to DEI and higher education, that's enough. People will clap and go home and eat a piece of cake. Like that's enough. That would be enough for people. But when you really care about what's going on, you investigate and see where these destructive ideologies have infiltrated our institutions. And it's not just on its surface saying, well, you're no longer going to force employees to go through this training. You're saying, wait a minute, the standards by which we judge whether or not a student is ready to graduate, those must also be changed. Guys, so listen. Okay. So when I read stuff like this, okay, and I watch the governor speaking, by the way, if you were watching on Facebook or you're watching on YouTube, you see that the governor is standing behind a podium with a sign that reads Florida, the education state. When I grow up, I want to do public relations like that. Yeah. That's what it looks like to be on message from. Oh my goodness, from start to finish. From start to finish.
Whoever he has in his cabinet.
Those people are eating their Wheaties. They know, they understand what's going on. Listen, man, there's a boldness and there is a certain level of I don't careness about that team that they're like, here are the issues. Here's what the people elected us to do. Here's what they're hoping that we will do. And we're going to do just that. And it's not just to throw to people a bone. It's not just to tell people, hey, look at what we've done. And then, you get a few surface level people who feel like a tremendous amount of success has been enjoyed. No, it's to really work through and through to say we are adversely affecting our children. Listen, guys, why does this matter? Because this changes the makeup of a nation. Yeah. Do you understand? This changes the makeup of a nation. I'm so sick and tired of people talking about elected officials and what they won't do, and then at the same time close their eyes to the indoctrination that's happening in their children, which they're the next generation of elected officials.
Right. So the cycle continues.
So if you want to stop this, man, if you want to change the trajectory of a nation for as long as the Lord allows us to be here and to be effective for his glory, you must always have your finger on the pulse of what is being taught to children. You must always have your finger on the pulse of what children are expected to know by this age. Where are the areas where our kids' minds are being abused? Right. And so we have this from K-12 on up to higher education. And what you see happening in Florida is you see leadership. Okay. I mean, that's bottom line. You see bottom leadership. Line. Yep. All right. One other thing here on this bill that was signed today. This new law also includes several additional reforms, including tasking the State Board of Education, the Board of Governors of the state university system with establishing faculty committees to ensure general education courses don't distort significant historical events or include a curriculum that teaches identity politics. This is when you woke up serious.
Right.
Do you understand? Because now we need to see your syllabus. Now we need to see what books you're recommending that the students read. Now we and in a way, I feel like, you could just kind of try to go back to a time before critical theory began to infiltrate the universities and maybe see what was being taught there, and then just include some more of the modern current events. Like, just because the history is not supposed to change, right? Like, the history is supposed to be the history. But the way we interpret that history has absolutely changed over the years based on ideology. And it's an ideology that's infiltrated our institutions of higher learning and trickled all the way down to pre-K. And this to me is such a shame. Again, courses can't be based on theories that systemic racism, sexism, oppression, and privilege are inherent in the institution of the United States and were made to maintain social, political, and economic inequities. In other words, get that out of here. It's critical race theory.
Well, he won't get the Woke Governor of the Year award.
Well,
not in that way.
Nor do I think he's in the running. I think it would be quite offensive for him to even make the list, But, again, to get back to what my conviction is, and the reason I'm covering this is because I think that there is an example here that the American people need to look at, not to say, oh, this is, I'm moving to Florida. Although I'm sure Governor DeSantis would take you. You know what I mean? That's not the point here. The point is, okay, where do I live? And what kind of laws are on the books, and what kind of laws should be on the books that represent what my convictions are? And who are the elected officials that I have put in office that are not doing what I expect them to do? Now, we know it can be done. If people want to do it, we know that it can be done. That's really what my call is today. Does this DeSantizing shine a light on other conservative states and conservative leadership? This is what the people want, and it absolutely can be done. That's really what I'm saying and what I'm asking. All right, we'll grab the break. Aaron the Addison's American Family Radio, and we'll be right back.
When you hear this
is American Family News.
You know what follows is the truth. Your news from a Christian perspective.
Hundreds of teachers are going to have to walk into that school building, and they are forced to swallow political ideology that in many cases violates their very faith and conscience.
If you miss it at the top of the hour, American Family News podcasts are available at afn.net. And sign up for our daily news brief at afn.net.
Forget about Facebook. The last 10 days we've been banned twice, and is unbanning a word?
They put us under the ban. Christians and conservatives
don't need you, YouTube. Banned one day, banned again.
AFR programs are now live streaming on the AFA streaming app. Now you can get shows like today's issues straight from the source.
Put back on the next.
Just say unbanned.
Unbanned.
Just search AFA streaming or visit streaming.afa.net to sign up.
We live in a day when America's families are under attack like never before.
Buddy Smith, Senior Vice President of the American Family Association.
The war against biblical principles rages on numerous fronts. The internet, Hollywood, Washington, D.C., America's corporate boardrooms, and the list goes on. At American Family Association, we're committed to standing against the enemies of God, the enemies of your family. And we recognize it's an impossible task without God's favor and your partnership. Thank you for being faithful to pray for this ministry, to give financially, and to respond to our calls for activism. What you do on the home front is crucial to what we do on the battlefront. We praise God for your faithfulness, and may He give us many victories in the battles ahead as we work together to restore our nation's biblical foundations.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MediShare. Maybe you've heard switching to MediShare to pay for healthcare can save the typical family $500 a month, and that's huge, but it's also true that people are way more satisfied after making the switch, too. The customer satisfaction rate for Medishare is double that of the typical health insurance plan. Double. Medishare works. It's been around for more than a quarter century, and members have shared more than $3 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So, yeah, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. 833-44-BIBLE. That's 833-44-BIBLE. 833-44-BIBLE.
So I throw up my hands and praise you again and again, 'cause all that I have is a hallelujah, hallelujah. And I know it's not much, but I've nothing else fit for a king except for a heart singing hallelujah.
Welcome back to Aaron the Addisons on American Family Radio. I'm Miki.
And I'm Will, and that's Brandon Lake with Gratitude.
I got to move faster on some of this. I want to look at because in the area of education, Governor DeSantis down in Florida also signed some other bills in the area of education. And I think it's important to note. So I'll move through these, and then we'll open the phone lines, get your take on it. Does this encourage you? Does it challenge you? Does it convict you? Or are you just indifferent? Don't call if you're just. Hey, I just called. I just want to tell you I don't care. Oh, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you for your time. Okay, no problem. No problem. All right, back to this. DeSantis signs 4 of the largest reforms in public education in the history of Florida. So I want to move through these pretty quickly here. Some of them I'll park at. Y'all know how I do. I'll try to do my best. Okay. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, a Republican, signed 4 landmark pieces of education legislation last week on Tuesday to seek to, quote, empower teachers, protect schools from the harmful effects of social media, expand student scholarships, and authorize one standardized test as an alternative to the 2 others. So in Florida, by to the SAT and the ACT, there's a new standardized test to be administered that's not going to bombard your kids with critical race theory questions about systemic racism and all of these things, forcing them to read stories. Like if you've got to do the essay portion or the reading comprehension portion of a standardized test, is not going to make you read all the ways that you're a hateful human being and then answer the questions to make sure that you understood what you just read. And I'm exaggerating now, but you know what I'm talking about. These days, this is what's happening in schools. All right. So this is wonderful. DeSantis' office has dubbed the package of 4 bills the Teacher's Bill of Rights, saying it contains some of the largest reforms to public education since the school choice wave that began in Florida in 1996. In one significant change, Florida will become the first state to allow the use of the Classic Learning Test, CLT, as an alternative to the Scholastic Aptitude Test, SAT, or the American College Testing Exam, the ACT, to determine whether students qualify to graduate. Man, listen, I'm telling you, okay, this is when you care. So here we go. SB 256. One of the bills signed by the governor focuses on paycheck protection. This includes prohibiting teachers' unions from deducting.
That's big. Because they have the chokehold on the education.
We have had teachers reach out to us and talk about these dues and talk about how they feel like they have to support things that are antithetical to their faith, to their conviction, to their beliefs, and that they have no choice in the matter. And again, it may be overly simplistic to say this is when you care. This is when you've heard the cries of people who are saying, and I'm tired of this. Yeah. Enough of this. Don't I have a right to align myself with organizations and entities that I agree with? Okay. So this includes prohibiting teachers' unions from deducting union dues directly from teachers' paychecks. Man, Florida joins other states.
To me. Right, like how are they able to do that? See, I'm in favor for anything that's going to loosen the grip of the unions on these teachers, man. It's like ridiculous.
And using those resources and using that power chokehold to advance their agenda over and against the desires, the wishes, and the convictions of those people who are paying for it. Florida joins other states such as Indiana that already have taken such a step to prevent teachers' unions from sneaking thousands of dollars a year out of teachers' pockets with such incremental paycheck deductions.
Right.
SB 256 also requires annual audits and financial disclosures for all teachers' unions, both local and national affiliates operating in Florida. The Florida Attorney General's office will be required to investigate suspected union fraud.
Mm-hmm. He's not making many friends.
Teachers' unions in Florida will be banned from parlaying with school boards in backroom deals at taxpayer and teachers' expense. All right, here's another bill. Another bill signed by DeSantis. HB 1537 rolls back regulations that have been accused of stunting growth in Florida's education sector for decades. Temporary teaching certificates will be good for 5 years rather than 3, and all levels of certification will have fewer unnecessary bureaucratic requirements. Specifically, teachers have new pathways to maintain and renew their certification. This will begin Florida's disentanglement from deeply out-of-state professional development requirements that have eaten up thousands of hours of teachers' time with little to show in gained skill or methodology. In other words, you cannot force teachers to sit through this continued indoctrination, saying that it's continuing education. You got to keep up your skills. You want to maintain your certification. Okay, but in what areas? In what ways are you adding to what I do?
Right.
In what ways are you advancing an ideology and using me as your, guinea pig? Not really, because they've tested it. If you can change people's minds, then you can change their actions. So really, it's not a guinea pig. It's just implementation now. Now we're just at the stage of implementation. We just do it. We indoctrinate people. We tell them that if you speak out against this, you lose your job. Mm-hmm. You speak out against this, you won't advance in your career. And so people, and unfortunately so, are so weak and not surrounded by enough support that they usually find themselves just giving in. So Florida, more beautifully than I'm saying it, has said no to that. All right. In a monumental shift, Florida is now the first state to authorize the classic learning test for students to qualify for graduation and to earn one of the state's Bright Futures Scholarship. The CLT is an alternative assessment for high school students that focuses on evaluating English, grammar, and mathematical skills, providing a comprehensive measure of achievement and aptitude. So I went to look into this because it's the first time I'd heard about it. So I went to look into this test. I went to the website and I started taking my practice test. Because let me just check it out, take my practice test. And then I had to make dinner. So I was like, okay, I got to stop. But I was like, man, this is incredible, because one of the things, like talking about some of the classic authors that kids will be required to read in their testing and not have their minds bombarded with the current approved literature. Mm-hmm. Do you understand? The progressive smut that masquerades as classic today for our kids. So anyway, this is just good stuff. One other thing. Let me jump down here. We'll give the phone number. Here is 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840. You can comment on what we're talking about today. All right. DeSantis also signed HB 477. HB 477, which reduces term limits for Florida's public school boards from 12 to 8 years. This change, according to the governor's office, brings school boards into line with the term limits set by Florida's governor, the governor's cabinet members, and Florida legislature. Very good. HB 379, the fourth bill signed by DeSantis, HB 379, focuses on taking social media out of Florida's public education system altogether. Can you just hear the Lysol can? When I read these, don't you just hear like a
oh boy.
Okay. It requires public school districts to prevent students from connecting to social media sites on district-owned computers and servers, as well as prohibits TikTok, a Chinese-owned social media program, to be accessed on district devices. HB 379 gives teachers increased authority to establish their own rules, free of administration, their own rules, free of administration intervention for students' cell phone use in their classrooms. You remember? Hey, come here. You remember when teachers could walk up to you with a Kleenex and tell you spit your gum out? Remember that?
Yes.
And remember, parents didn't care or file complaints? Remember that? So now, how about teachers can walk up to you and say, hey, the cell phone, we're confiscating the cell phone. It can go in this box until teaching education time is over. How about that? What about that? Because that's the new, well, maybe it's not the new equivalent of taking the piece of gum.
You might have another problem that spring up, but that's a great start. That's a great start. A parent's going to have the parents. Parents going to have the parent because students are going to want to fight if they take their cell phone taken away.
Well, you know what? But not in a Florida classroom. We're not talking about Chicago. We're not talking about Chicago. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is in a lot of these liberal-leaning states, man, teachers fear for their lives because if they teach, if they serve in the role of the leader in the classroom, they would be attacked and the students would be justified. The students would be defended, not the teachers. I just don't see that happening in Florida. Like, I mean, and I don't know. Look, and you make a great point here because
Florida is pretty,
a lot of kids who are addicted to devices
they get upset.
Show a lot of aggression when you say no and when you take those things away. I've seen some videos, parents recording their kids when they take their devices away. Yeah. And I thought it was acting. I thought that's got to be made up. But I'm talking just the rage that comes from these kids. So look, I think you're right. I think that there's some, caution
Parents
there.
are going to have to parent. Like at the end of the day, all these things are great. Man, I want to see this around the country. I think this is, but when you get down to it, it's still going to take like big work from home to be able to change some of the stuff that has been going on.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right. Well, I think I covered all four of those. Let's turn to our listeners and see what they want to comment on today. Will the Great, where do we go?
All right, let's go to Mike in West Virginia. Hi, Mike.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was an elementary teacher, and I'd like to know why not start an alternative teachers union so that instead of joining the teachers union run by Boris Badenov, the teachers could instead join a teachers union run by Roger Ramjet.
Okay.
I don't know those two names.
Yeah, me neither, but
so I'd have to look that up.
I can kind of guess where he's going with this.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm in favor. I'm in favor of teachers doing what is necessary for them to maintain their conscience.
Yes.
So whatever that looks like, I'm in favor of teachers having the right to say, I don't want to align myself with this. I understand that there are certain, there's certain so-called protections and advantages that would be dangled in front of teachers as, being a part of this union. But I'm in favor of teachers not being compelled to support things that are antithetical to their faith, to their deeply held religious beliefs. I'm in favor of teachers not being forced to, I'm going to say make donations, but that sounds voluntary. Not be taxed, right? Because that's more of like you don't have an option to support things that actually make them a target. They are paying money for their own attack. Like I'm in favor of that. So I can look up those other names. I'll go back and have to get that and see what you're talking about. I don't know if that's part humor or if those are people that I should know in teacher union world. I'll have to look that up. All right, Will the Great, where do we go next?
Let's go to Lynn in Arkansas. Hi, Lynn.
Hi. Yeah, I was going to say I think that's great what he's doing. And I also had a comment about him and Disney.
Sure.
Some have said that, DeSantis, that is, that DeSantis is retaliating against them. But one of the aspects of Disney and their privileges was that they had their own law system. And there were things in the past that didn't get reported that happened at Disneyland. And so that should not be for anybody.
Yeah, thank you so much for your comments. I appreciate that, Lynn. I don't think that the governor is retaliating. I think that the governor is governing. I think to say that, what makes you worthy of enjoying certain privileges within a state when you are going to become an activist organization and actively work against that state's leadership, actively work against that state's residents, I don't know. I don't see it so much as retaliating. I know that there are people who are saying that, but I think he's governing. I think he's saying, hey, listen, what are those over there? Like, it's kind of going in and doing this cleanup to be able to enjoy being a town within a state, like being your own town. You know what I'm saying? Like governing yourself and then saying there are no repercussions for what we do or what we say. I don't know. I think that maybe was too long enjoyed. And I think that Disney felt that it had a right to those protections, a right to those privileges. But really, it's time for Disney to, I would say, recognize that you have that at the approval of the people. And what do I mean when I say that? I say that the people elected this governor.
Right.
And so this governor is representing the people, right? And so anyway, there's that. All right, Will the Great, where do we go?
All right, let's go. Is this Pastor Norman in Mississippi?
Yes.
Hey.
This is
Wow.
Pastor Norman.
How you doing?
Pastor Norman.
Hello.
Hey. Go ahead.
One question.
Uh-huh.
Oh my goodness, the connection is really bad. I can't understand.
Pastor Norman, we can't.
We can't. No, we have to disconnect the call.
We can't understand what you're saying, Pastor Norman. Sorry.
I give it a few seconds to try to work its way out. Sometimes if you move to a different room and tilt your head to the side, then it can clear up. But it's just excruciating. Listen, here's the bottom line of what I'm saying. I hope that Pastor Norman will call us again because it's been a long time since we've heard from him. It's been a really long time. Here's the bottom line of what I'm saying as we come to the end of this program. We should have expectations of our elected officials. There should be certain things that we expect them to do, especially as we look at what's popular in our country, like what kinds of things are on the rise. We have discernment as we are reading God's word and understanding what righteousness is, what truth is. Man, there should be greater expectations that those that we vote for, those that we put in office would operate according to those kinds of expectations. What? Truth, righteousness, leadership, moral governance, right? And so when I look at what Ron DeSantis is doing in Florida, I do call it DeSantizing. I'm going to keep calling it that. But I'm hoping that it shines a light on some of the other conservative states, some of the other conservative-leaning legislatures all across this country, and that they will move to act according to their description. We're out of time until tomorrow, Lord willing.
God bless.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family